Hello, friends and colleagues. How are you? Hope everything is well. We are Think Catalyst, and we are here for our weekly podcast. And since this is Thanksgiving week in the United States, Vivek and I thought we would do a Thanksgiving edition of our podcast for this week, and because we are veteran ad guys who love this business and have been very fortunate about working on it and in this business. We have a lot to be thankful for. And so we thought we would dedicate just a few minutes of your time in this podcast to talk a little bit about what we think is good and what we're thankful for. Vivek, how are you doing this evening?
Good. Hello, everyone. How is everyone? How are you, Ricardo?
Good.
I'm doing good. I'm struggling with something stuck in my throat, but I'll do my best. I'll fight through it. What we want to do in this podcast is we've spent a lot of time talking about the issues that face the industry, and there's certainly a lot of issues and lots of challenges that have to be dealt with. But many families around Thanksgiving have I think, very nice tradition to sit around the table and talk about all the things they're thankful for. So I think we should do some of that for the ad industry, and not only from our perspective, because we're old guys that are kind of on our way out, but just some things to think about for the next generation regarding the good things in the ad industry, and there's a lot of them. So do you want to start out with the list? We go one by one?
Absolutely. I'll start with the first point. For me, one of the things that really captivated me and made me want to really be in this business is that creativity and the power of creativity and great ideas can have tremendous impact on businesses and industries and in changing consumer behavior and thinking differently. And I've found it fascinating from the very beginning of when I started this business. And it's been a consistent theme over my career and what I've been able to do with many, many clients.
It's if you think about other industries, when you're in advertising, you can have an outsized impact. You can punch way above your weight if you get the ideas right. And you can do that across a lot of different industries. You're not stuck in one industry. So you can go one day from marketing cigarettes for a decade or so, to the next day you can be working on a campaign against drunk driving. And in both of those areas, you can have a significant impact as compared to if you were in some other industry. So that's one of the cool things of this profession. I really like it. I'm not one for save the world advertising, but I certainly am all for reducing drunk driving, controlling drug consumption, nowadays reducing smoking. Lots of good things you can do. Lots of impact you can make.
Think of the power of creativity, Vivek. I actually saw an article today on LinkedIn about how Nike and Reebok competed over 30 years ago, and they were both valued around the same. They had the same brand valuation and business valuation. And the story is that Nike was very consistent with their slogan, with their execution, with their vision, whereas Reebok changed and had many changes and had many reiterations of what they were offering to the consumer. And now I think and the article stated that Nike now is valued 23 times more than Reebok is valued in the market. So the power and a lot of it had to do with other things, and product innovation and new products and distribution and so forth. But the power of the Nike brand, the swoosh logo, the slogan, was at the center of the offering, and it was really the vision of that business that was consistent and made it the business that it is today. So the agency was a big and important partner to Phil Knight and that team for many years, and that's the power of creativity. So thankful for this as our first point that we discussed this evening, and something to remember. And I think, for me, it was one of my guiding positions going forward in this, in deciding that I was going to dedicate my career to this.
Absolutely.
Want to talk about number 2?
Yes, sir. You can work on all sorts of brands, all sorts of industries, all sorts of challenges without getting stuck on one. I have nightmares thinking of a career where I would only exclusively focus on one product, no matter what the product is. Can you imagine what 20 years spent just thinking about high fiber cereals or motor oil, for example, would be like? I would shoot myself. I need variety in my life. I need to talk about trucks in the morning and diapers in the afternoon. And you can only do that in advertising. I can't think of another industry where you have that.
So when I started in the business, I worked on one brand initially, and then as I got promoted to account executive, account supervisor, account director, I worked on a number of businesses, and then, ultimately as CEO, I was running 40 clients with 400 people in Mexico at Omnicom Media Group, and previously at Gray in the region. The fun part was really working on very many different brands, and I knew that every Monday morning I would come into the office and it would be something completely different. The challenge would be different. The week would be defined what was going to happen that Monday, and the agenda would also change a little bit, but it was never a boring week in the business. Most of it a lot of fun, sometimes some heavy duty problems, but I must say it was never boring. So terrific.
Well, let me add a little personal anecdote, because I worked on consumer packaged goods for most of the start of my career, soaps and detergents and that sort of stuff. And one day I find myself sitting in an office at Leo Burnett, Hong Kong, overseeing the Chinese market, and P&G decides that they are going to make an acquisition. So they buy the Tampax company, and they decide that they want to launch a brand of tampons in China. And I get stuck with that assignment. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't speak the language. I don't understand the culture. I don't understand the category, but I got to go ahead and do it. And it was a hell of a challenge, and I learned a lot. But that's the sort of thing that can only happen to you in advertising. It doesn't happen in other categories. This out of left field, wacky, crazy assignment that you have to deliver only happens in this business.
Absolutely. You don't know what your next assignment really is, do you? It comes along with your client and, the territory that you're in. So
yeah, absolutely.
which really actually dovetails really nicely into point number 3, which I'll bring up. And that is that in this business, one of the really nice things that I appreciated was that you could rise through the ranks in many different ways and quite quickly, depending on your talent. So if you walk into an agency, you will immediately realize that there's very different and very vast talented people working on the business. When I was at school, there wasn't an advertising major or even a communications major that I remember. I'm an econ major, but I happen to think that advertising would be an interesting, at least beginning of a career. My in on advertising was I'll work at an agency, work with a number of different clients, and then I'll choose which client I want to go and work with as my real job. And I ended up staying in advertising forever. As I moved up, learning many different skill sets, I also happen to know a couple of languages in the international route, which we'll talk about in a second, was something that propelled me to be in this business. You too, Vivek. But any thoughts or comments on the level of talent and the rising through the ranks?
Well, I think we've all met people who have risen very quickly in the creative department. There's many examples of very young people taking on very important jobs very quickly. But I think your example is interesting because the fact that you spoke so many different languages in addition to English just opened up a whole international career path for you that would probably have been slower if you didn't have the languages. But because you had that particular skill set, I mean, you just you moved up the ladder very quickly. There's lots of examples of it. And if you want an industry where you're not going to be a cog in the wheel, where you can actually make an impact very quickly, this is the industry. The only other industry I can think of where you can do that maybe is if you're a superstar software entrepreneur, but it's probably easier to get struck by lightning. Your odds are better of getting struck by lightning than being a superstar software entrepreneur. So in this industry, you can make your mark quickly.
Going on to the next point, which you were mentioning earlier, is the fact that this business and this profession is truly international in many ways. And I was super fortunate because I was been able to live and work in the States and in Europe and in the last 25 years in Latin America, and it's been a wonderful ride. My language has propelled me, but they also propelled me to understand different cultures and quickly adapt and bring the skill sets that I learned at the very beginning in the US and in Europe to other markets that were developing fast. And hard work, combination of luck, situations that, when push comes to shove, I raised my hand. I said, okay, I'll go ahead and do it. And it turned into a wonderful career. And obviously, in my time in Mexico, I met you, and now here we are, being entrepreneurs at our very young, tender ages that we are, and doing something different. Actually, I don't think that you do anything the same. You do something different, and that's one of the things that this business really allows you and gives you the opportunity to do.
So I think the best evidence that this is an international profession is just your background and my background. So your guy was born in Italy, grew up in the US, worked in Europe, and is worked in Brazil, and has spent 15 years, 20 years now in Mexico.
Mhm.
And I'm a guy who was born in India, grew up in Latin America. I now live in Chicago, and in my advertising career, I had the opportunity of living and working in Venezuela, Mexico, Hong Kong, and China, and Chicago. And this doesn't include, by the way, the regional jobs that you did and the regional jobs that I did. That, I mean, one day we should do it. One day we should actually look at a map and see which countries in the world we have not visited. And it's going to be easier to identify the ones we haven't been to than the ones we have been to. So it's as international a profession as you can find, and that's not going to change. I think
Beautiful.
it's a lot of
I
fun.
travel the
And
world.
one final story. I always like to tell this story. I have a daughter that was made in Hong Kong, uh, because this profession allowed me to go and live in Hong Kong. So
It's awesome. Yeah, I travel the world as well, Vivek. Not as much
well,
Asia like you did, but I've been in many, many places, and how fortunate I feel about that. Really am.
well, but just think about it, Ricardo. How many languages do your kids speak?
So my kids speak 5 languages,
There you go. There you go.
and one is a sixth with Mandarin. So
So just that fact probably puts your kids in the top 0.3% of language speakers in the world. Just that.
yeah,
So that's impressive.
and it's actually
Absolutely.
propel them in
Of
their
course.
schooling and in their professional ventures. So yeah, very exciting in that terms.
Absolutely.
You want to take on the
Let me
next
go with the
one?
next one. I
Yeah.
want to take the next one. I love this one. I love this one. Um, this is one of the very, very few professions where humor and acting like a kid and playing and having fun is part of the workday. It's part of the process, and it's a part of the end product. Um, the worst nightmare for an advertising person is to actually have to sit in an office with accountants or lawyers and act like you're doing a real job, because part and parcel of this profession is the fun. It's what makes it so fascinating, and everyone has fun stories to tell. I'm sure you have some fun stories to share with us.
Absolutely. It's one of the businesses that, as CEO and managing director, I obviously took it very seriously, but there's the other side where you don't want to take it as seriously either, especially when you're dealing with artistic minds like creatives, and producers, and people who are involved in film, and these days the digital folks are all a different almost a different breed as well, but they don't take themselves seriously. They have a lot of fun, and yet at the same time they're very professional about going about developing either a media plan or a piece of work that eventually will be in TV or in digital or on some other media that addresses a business need and delivers on a business solution. So there is that combination of seriousness and at the same time and not taking yourself too seriously, because the business needs that. Okay. And in my opinion, I used to always tell my clients, a great idea will happen in 5 minutes, but you don't know when that 5 minutes will comes up. So you need 2 or 3 weeks after a brief has been defined to let the whole process flow.
Absolutely.
And curiously enough, I mean, some of the craziest ideas have happened at 1 a.m. But they're not that crazy, because when they land and they're structured and they're put together and they are addressing a strategic need, they can be wonderful. Back to point number one, where you can make a complete difference on a business with one idea.
And the one more thing I'd like to say about this, we're talking about great ideas, but often a great idea will be followed by a peal of laughter because there's an element of fun in the idea, or a great joke or something that is extremely funny will lead to a great idea. There is an intimate connection between fun and great ideas. And as someone who's done a lot of training in creative thinking, I can say that whenever a group is trying to come up with ideas and I can hear them and they're laughing and they're joking, I know there's going to be an idea. When there's silence, I'm terrified. And when there's silence, what you want to do is spice it up with a joke or interject some controversy or make someone blush. And immediately the engine will start running and the ideas will come in and the fun quotient will go up.
You were involved in a campaign that was developed. I mean, initially it was like, no, we can't do this. But why don't you tell us the story of your Crest campaign, Vivek?
The egg story. Well, this was, I was working in Venezuela. I was at Leo Burnett running the Crest business, and they did a commercial that ran across the world, but it's very simple. They take an egg and they brush one side with Crest, and then they put it in acid overnight, and then they take it out, and the side that's brushed with Crest stays firm and strong, and the other side gets all mushy. So it's a very simple analogy. So we were shooting the commercial. Production was the next day, and I get a call from the production house saying, we have a problem. We can't find white eggs in Venezuela. There are exchange controls and import restrictions and all sorts of weird stuff going on back then. So yeah, we can't find white eggs in Venezuela. And unfortunately, if you paint a brown egg, the whole chemical reaction won't work properly. So you can't do that. And by the way, that would be cheating. So Procter and Gamble would never do that. So I call up my brother and I say, please buy a carton of eggs and be at the airport at such and such time outside customs, and stand there and wait for me. And I arrived, walked out of customs, said hello to my brother, took the carton of eggs, turned around, checked in the next flight back, and 3 hours later, I was in Caracas and the problem was solved. Two things. First of all, this can only happen in advertising. Nowhere else can this happen. And second, I wish I had taken a picture of my brother's expression when he was standing there waiting with the eggs at customs. That was hilarious. Priceless. To borrow a phrase from MasterCard, priceless. Yeah. But that sort of fun you don't get anywhere else. You really don't.
Oh, I'll go on to the next point, our sixth point here, and why we're thankful. I think that one of the great things about working in this business is that you actually get to work and get to meet very, very different people in a very different atmosphere that is really not traditional and quite informal in many ways. And because it has a level of an artistic element to it, you'll find people that are a little bit nuts, a little bit nerdy, a little bit obsessive, straight, gay, high levels of gender equality, all kinds of different people that actually, when they come together in a very interesting way, they develop very powerful teams. And I think that diversity is part of the reason why this business is highly creative. When you have a diverse environment And I know it's a little bit fashionable to talk about it, but in advertising, it's been around for a long, long time. And when you have a diverse environment, you have discussions, you have conversations, you have people thinking different things. You have different ideas that come in, and the beautiful part about it is when we actually stretch our ability to develop different solutions for clients, and that's really terrific.
I started in this business, so what? I moved to an advertising agency in around 1990. So that's going to be about 30 plus years ago. And back then, even back then, there were loads of women in powerful positions in advertising. This industry has been diverse, and we were happily diverse because we never talked about it. It was just like that. And it's been like that forever and a day. So that's always been kind of cool. You meet some characters in this business that would probably not be allowed in the doors of other corporations, but it's a lot of fun.
Try walking into an agency these days, even more so than 30 years ago when we were starting in this business. But if you walk into an agency, it's unlike a most office atmospheres. You'll find a pool or a ping pong table. You'll find food all over the place, coffee machines. They go on forever. Meeting areas are not necessarily a meeting room, but they are corners and spaces that are very unique. And all of them kind of fit the culture of the agency, and the culture of the agency defines also that workspace as well. But a lot of fun, and the level of being unstructured is actually part of the drive to allow for creativity to flow very, very freely, and ideas to flow very freely. So,
which leads us into the next point, which is one of my favorite points. When you work in advertising, you get to witness the magic of creativity every day, and it is magical because think about it. We have every project that is handled in an agency needs to be resolved with a unique solution. There is no mass production of solutions. Every single solution has to be different from the one before. And your tools. You start with nothing, basically. You start with words, images, music, expressions, insights, all intangible things, and you mix them all together and you come up with a magical solution that in its best form will make people laugh, will make people cry, it'll make people react. And that, again, I'm going to use this word again, that's priceless. The feeling you get when you see a great idea is just, you can't describe it. You immediately know that you have a winner, and you immediately know that all the stress and the deadlines and everything, it was all worthwhile. It just feels great. I love it.
you know, Vivek, if you think about it, most products and services are all the same. They aren't that differentiated. So what advertising and communications and media does, done well, is to differentiate, to separate, to position, to carve out a niche. And we recently were working on a project where, you know, a very generic product that we were handed when we did the positioning, when we did the credentials, and ultimately the storytelling, we redefined what this project and what this product is, and the service. And now we've made it into a very unique product, a very one of a kind offering that will we've seen that has a lot of potential in terms of business development. So that's the power of creativity. And more and more we'll find that there's less differentiation with products these days. It all comes down to the brand.
So there's more and more need for creativity because
Absolutely.
the difference is the creativity.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
A couple more points and we'll end it. But my experience has been that I was exposed, this business really exposed me to a very wide range of disciplines and specialties that I learned on many different fronts. I think, as I mentioned earlier, no day is the same, no experience is the same. And I found that the learning process was continuous, right? I started on the creative side, I moved on to the media side, and then, in the interim, the whole digital revolution came about and how we used it, data and analytics, competitive reviews, consumer behavior, ego management, persuasion, negotiation. All of these things sort of were an ongoing, rolling update and part of the learning process that we went through. When you're an account executive, it's a very different job than when you're a supervisor, an account director, and eventually a managing director. And so very varied in those terms, never a dull moment, always learning something new, and a fascinating part of being in this business, that you can continue to learn every day.
Huge mix of hard skills, the data science, the numbers, and then the soft skills, which is the creativity, the persuasion, the handling egos, the selling. There's a lot of selling involved. And every project is a mixture of one or two or three or many of these elements. And it as you said, you do one, you move on to the next one, and it's another mix of different things. But I don't think you get this sort of mix of hard and soft skills in many other industries, to be honest. You really don't. So there's a discipline and a skill for everyone, and then there's all of them for the generalists. It's a lot of fun.
You want to tell us about the thrill of the chase?
Yeah, this one, I love this one. I love two things in this business. I already talked about ideas, and the other thing is you get involved in what I like to call the intoxicating process of new business. I like to explain new business as a unique cocktail of strategy, creativity. I'd have to add data nowadays, data science, mixed with espionage, mixed with storytelling, and mixed with old-fashioned seduction, basically, because you're selling stuff. You're making people fall in love with you, no? And it's all put together, it's all served up with a large dose of adrenaline, a huge jolt of adrenaline. And it ends, to borrow a phrase from the 1970s, from the wide world of sports in the 1970s, with the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat. And there is no thrill that is bigger than when you win a piece of new business. And there's no misery that's more miserable than when you don't win, when you come in second in new business. So I absolutely love that part of it.
I called it the thrill of the chase. It's always fun because you're actually coming up with a solution that is currently not in the eyes of the prospect, by the way. And the advertising people they adapt very quickly to different situations, and new business allows you to work on, very different products every day, and different potential prospects every day. So today you're working with bank and financing, and tomorrow it's a tire or a piece of clothing, and the problems are approached in a very different way. So it is exciting. It is exciting. By the way, we often talk about how the pitch process is broken, and there's going to be other podcasts about that. But it's a drug. Let me tell you, we get hooked on that, and it's part of the excitement of the business.
And it's unlike new business in other categories, which boils down to cold calling in some sense. You knock on enough doors, and just through probabilities, a small percentage of those doors will open. But this is different. This is not knocking on 100 doors. This is solving a specific problem and selling a solution to a prospect, which is so much more interesting than just knocking on doors and cold calling. So,
well,
I love new business.
When you come up with great ideas and you become famous for delivering on huge creative ideas, clients, prospects come to knock on your door, and then you can be choosy. And it's quite interesting when they say, when a large brand, already maybe to a certain degree a successful brand, that will come knock on your door and challenge you to say, okay, take me on to the next level. And that becomes hugely fun as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Want to take the last point, Vivek? In the end, what is
I will. And in the end, it's just advertising. I think this is my personal opinion, and a personal anecdote. My wife works as an interpreter in the medical and legal fields, and she has to sit there and interpret for people who are dying of cancer, or she's been known to go to a prison and interpret when someone is being interrogated and they're talking about, God knows, murder or crimes and that sort of stuff. And I tell her every day that I could not do that for one day. So I'm thankful. I just work in advertising. There's no wars, there's no crimes, there's no disease, there's nothing that is life and death. It's fun, and it keeps you away from the really miserable aspects of life. So I'm really thankful for that. And I think the more you work in other professions, the more you value a profession that is fun. It's not that important, and it's not life and death. I value that very much. I'm thankful for that.
Look, to each their own, Vivek. People get enamored with the business that they work in. Hopefully, most, I would like to think that people enjoy the work that they're doing. We have been super fortunate, and we now close our Thanksgiving edition of our podcast, again saying thanks. And we thought we would share, a little bit of the experiences that Vivek and I have had in this wonderful business. We wish you all a great Thanksgiving. Dia de Gracias, as they say in Spanish speaking countries and homes. Like us, subscribe, share our podcast. If you have any comments, let us know. We like to make this serious and fun at the same time, like we've done today. And we appreciate your viewership as well. So, Vivek, any closing thoughts?
Just for the next generation of advertising people, there's a lot of good stuff in this business. So stick with it. And the other thing is, as we say in the US Hispanic market, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Enjoy the holiday and be safe, and see you again next week. Take care.
Take care.